Hey guys, what's going on? So in today's video, I'm going to be going over with you the R5. It has the high megapixels for photography, got the ability to shoot in 4K. It got a little bit of a bad rap out the gate. I'm finding that the type of shooting that I do, it's really working out really well. And one of the things that I did differently than some is rather than buy the camera and then buy a bunch of RF glass, I am sticking with my EF and EF-S lenses. So for example, then the way I'm doing that is by using the EF lens mount, and this is the one with the drop-in ND filter. So you can see it has a little ND built into it. I really love that. The fact that this works with really any lens that I have without having to like figure out how to fit a variable ND on the front of a lens, I think it's great. I think this is a really neat solution. It's like you get two things. There's really been zero compromise. This is the 16 to 35 millimeter 2.8. It's my ultra wide lens that I just love. And using these three things together, no problems whatsoever. Nails the focus. Low lights, phenomenal. Even with the ND filter in, I'm finding that I'm getting decent low light performance with the camera, so I'm super happy about that. And then as far as like the 4K goes, you know, you can shoot in 4K standard for extended periods of time. If you want to get a sharper 4K, run it in the super sampled 4K mode, which is the high quality, which will allow you to get an even sharper image. You know, for YouTube, that's one of the things early on that everyone said that this was not a YouTuber's camera. I tend to disagree with that a little bit because I feel like it can work for you if you understand the limitations of the camera and like how to work with those. You'll learn it and you'll be able to solve the problems. Production work, I think if you're a cinematographer or something, I think that you would probably have a cinema camera and not an R5. I think the R5 though could be used for a YouTuber. I'm a YouTuber, I'm using it, I don't have any problems. Super stoked to show you what I've learned so far. I've had this for about a week and it's really an amazing camera. You know, it's got some really amazing features like the 4K 120. It's got the ability to do 8K. I found that my laptop isn't actually powerful enough to edit 8K. It takes forever to render, so I'm not really jumping into 8K. 8K wasn't the reason I got it. The main reason that I got the camera was to do 4K and to basically use all my existing Canon glass, and I don't know, it's really an amazing camera. But anyways, without further ado, let's jump right in and I'm gonna show you what I've learned. Okay, so here we have the R5 and the EF mount. In order to remove this, please squeeze here and here at the bottom. Here's this little dial, and this one goes from ND3, that's the min, and it does stop, which I like that. It actually has that built-in stop. And then as we turn it, it'll go all the way up to ND500, which as you can see, is just incredibly dark. So then we take off the front. The shutter covers the sensor. So this is the front of the adapter where you mount the lens. And as you can see here, we can get both EF and EF-S glass, the red and the white. Line up the little red dot for the RF mount. This is where your shutter is going to be. This will control ISO, and then this is your aperture wheel, and then this was your ND. So typically if I want to shoot something, I'll spin this down, and then I'll set my exposure. I like to shoot in manual mode. So we'll be doing this whole thing in manual. If you want, when you get the camera and when you want to switch from video, between video and photography, you basically just push this mode button up top and then info, and that kind of just switches you back and forth. Here we're set up to shoot a photo, and if you hit mode again and then go to info, you'll notice that we're back in video mode. So you can see right here that we are slightly overexposed, and if we hit that info button, you'll see right here at the histogram. One of the ways to really deal with exposure is of course to speed up your shutter, and as you speed your shutter up, you'll see that scene is darkening. But we're filming here, we're filming at 20 4P, so we're gonna want our shutter to be about 1/50th of a second. See, I'm also shooting at 2.8, and this aperture wheel, you'll see that it'll also darken up the shot, but then we have, obviously, if we close down that aperture, we're gonna lose our blurry background, and depending on whether or not that's what you want. ISO is done up here on this dial, so we can also dial down our ISO, and then of course we could open up our aperture. Dial it down. Native ISO for this camera is 400, so that's what we're going to go with. We're going to put it at 400. Here's the other part. So this guy right here is our ND. So it's all the way open at this point. I'm going to take the ISO back up to being overexposed. And now I'm going to use the ND filter. So I'm going to actually just spin it with my thumb in the back here. And you'll notice that the ND is also capable of reducing the amount of light into the camera. So those are the 4 ways that I've been shooting with in manual. I love having the little ND here in the back. You can just visually look through the electronic viewfinder, or you can look right here on the screen and see where your exposure lies. It would be cool if it actually displayed somewhere here on the screen, but it doesn't work that way. So if you hit the Q button for quick control, you'll see over here that we are currently shooting at 4K, 24 frames per second. And if we hit set, this will take us to a screen that shows all the various available shooting modes. Now these will vary depending on the speed of your memory card. I'm currently using a CF Express card, and it's a 512 gigabyte. I'll leave a link down in the description. It's working fantastically. I haven't had any trouble at all with it. You can see right here, one of the 8K modes, you're getting the full sensor width and most of the height. Then there's this mode here, which is actually the Ultra HD equivalent, just like the 4K Ultra HD. So you can go through these modes right here, and then you also have a full HD mode. Okay, so the one that I've been filming mostly in is the full 4K Ultra HD, 23.98 frames per second in the All-I codec. That's one of the ways that you can film without overheating the camera. But you also have to go into menu, and then on the very first screen, you'll see it's a movie recording quality. You'll see my crop is disabled here. If I select this, and then you'll see high frame rate is disabled, and also the 4K HQ mode is disabled. So if we would enable the 4K HQ mode, this effectively turns on the super sampling for the camera, and then basically what that means is it'll take the full sensor and super sample it down to 4K, and this will be slightly more sharp. The other thing you will notice if you go back to this screen, you'll notice that it actually says right here, it says 4K fine. See right there, 4K fine. That means that you're running in the super sampling mode. This mode will overheat after a period of time. I think it's like 30 minutes. But yeah, if you don't want to deal with any overheating or worry about that, then basically you will just go into menu and then go to movie recording quality and then turn the HQ mode off. And this will result in a slightly less sharp 4K version. It's basically the standard 4K. However, for YouTube and things like that, I really feel like it's probably going to be good enough. And I will show you the difference between those 2 modes, and you can tell me if you can tell the difference. Okay, so this is the 4K 24 frames per second with the HQ mode turned off. Okay, so these are the exact same settings with the HQ mode turned on. So this is super sampled 4K coming off of the 8K sensor. Do you notice any difference on YouTube? What about shooting at like 120 or something like that? How would we achieve that? So basically what you can do is select movie record quality and then select high frame rate and then enable the high frame rate. Audio is not available in high frame rate, so that is one thing that you're going to lose. You can't speed up the footage later to normal speed and recover any audio. There's no audio sampled at all. So that's kind of unfortunate. I wish they would have just included some form of audio, like slow motion audio. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe a firmware will help us out with that in the future. So once you've done that, this mode also, if you run in this mode for a long period of time,
you are going to accumulate a vast amount of data because you are sampling at this, this high rate. So you can also see that you cannot turn on the 4K HQ mode. It's not super sampling the 8K sensor down to 4K. It's basically doing some other thing like pixel binning or something like that. So, but I think it looks fine, to be honest with you. This camera, I just wanted to get a camera that shot in 4K with a full frame sensor, and that's what this achieved, as well as it gives me, I have a larger sensor in case I really want to do something crazy. I can turn those settings on. Okay, so obviously at this setting, you'll see that it has changed my shutter to 1/125th of a second. I'm gonna go ahead and bump that up to 1/250th in order to get that to look cinematic. And then of course, we're gonna have to rotate our ISO dial and take it up to probably about 800 to get our exposure to match. And actually it's looking a little bit dim to me, so I'm gonna go a little bit further. The lighting out here is kind of moving around on us. At night in this mode, 120 and in low light, you could pull this out. However, this leaves the sensor exposed. So they do sell a clear one of these. Unfortunately, I have not been able to get one ordered because they're all out of stock. Kind of wanted to show you how I'm able to get exposure with this EF mount. I really do love it. I'm the only thing that I would complain about is it's possible to maybe bump this and maybe not realize it. Like say you accidentally bumped it, reduce some of your light, and then you end up ramping up your ISO or something, or say you were running an auto ISO and you darkened it too much, you could end up with noise. So you just be careful of that. I always typically just sort of scroll it down at first, and then I go at my shutter aperture ISO, and then if I need to, then I'll add back in, I'll darken the ND to get the exposure where I want it to be. There is a drop-in CPL. There's like I mentioned before, a drop-in clear filter, and perhaps there'll be other types of filters that drop in later on.
All right, that's gonna be it for this one. So in the next video, I'm planning to cover what settings are required to get 10-bit 422. I think 12 bit's obvious. You switch to RAW. So be sure to subscribe so we can go through that. I'm currently having a problem with Premiere. Premiere isn't actually working with the 10-bit files. That's something I'm working on, and we'll see you in that video. Take care. Bye.